about 6 months ago, some wag or other suggested to me that I should be doing something for the presidential talk. And what was I going to be talking about? And I thought, that's a terribly good question under the circumstances. So I hadn't really thought too much about it. So I decided I'd better think about it. And I decided, very difficult. I mean, I could choose a subject that I knew a lot about, but I wasn't convinced that a short history of Scottish curling would necessarily be of great interest to the members of the Clyde River Steamer Club. So then I thought something original, like go on a tour and tell them about the tour. And then I realized that Stuart Craig had written not one, not two, but 3 books about such a tour. So then I thought, well, bringing sport together with that, maybe introducing some illegal performance-enhancing drugs, I could talk about a tour around the CalMac network and fleet, but call it Away with the Ferries on steroids. So plagiarism, marvelous. Steal someone else's idea, jazz it up a bit, absolutely great. So that's what we're going to be doing this evening. It started off back probably January time when the timetables came out. There was a bit of a delay with planning and preparation. And as Benjamin Franklin once said, fail to prepare and prepare to fail, words to that effect. So I kind of printed out all the various timetables that were available to me at the time. You see the result up there. I was taken back to the 1960s. Those of you who are old enough will remember the Day Sea Rover tickets. And I suppose I'd be about 11 when I was first allowed to go away for a day on the Clyde fleet. And the challenge was to get as far away as I could from Largs on as many ships and visit as many piers. The difference with this planning and this preparation was that it was the whole of the western seaboard. And I had to kind of factor in overnight accommodation and in addition to that, factor in cars and things like that. The other thing is it's quite difficult to arrange 8 days away, you know, when you have a wife. But my wife came to the rescue because she said to me, we're resurrecting the idea of going on the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage walk that she and a friend had wanted to go on before COVID intervened. Oh, I said, that sounds good. When were you thinking? May, she said. I said, oh, that's even better. I said, how many days were you thinking about? She said about 10. I said, oh my goodness. Well, that's interesting. So you're going to be away for 10 days? She said, yes. I said, oh, okay. I said, I might just take a wee trip up north. I said, just take in some ferries and things. She said, oh, how long were you thinking about? Oh, 2 or 3 days. I said, 2 or 3 days. So 8 days later, as you can see. So that was the planning and everything else. And we move on to the second page of that before telling you about day one. I am very, very fortunate indeed in that my brother lives in Muir of Ord. The ferry Loch Seaforth leaves, I think it's 10:30 in the morning. And the thought of getting up at stupid o'clock in Edinburgh and driving all the way up to catch the 10:30 ferry was not one I was thinking about with great favour. And then actually, again, Lois, bless her, said, why don't you go and stay with your brother Brian in Muir of Ord? And I thought, that's just a tremendous idea. So I did. Of course, it's only about 90 minutes from Muir of Ord over to Ullapool. So that was part of the plan, and that worked out really well. So day one was a fairly simple day. It was Ullapool to Loch Maddie, via Lewis, Harris, and Berneray. So it was actually only 2 trips. And here I want to pay tribute and thank the Ships of CalMac website because they produced this lovely little map, which I'll come back to from time to time. But you can see quite clearly there that I was starting off kind of halfway up, 2/3 of the way up Ullapool, across to Stornoway, and then down as far as Loch Maddie. So I arrived in good time at the pier. You'll know the pier, the marshalling area, you'll know all of that. And the car is a hybrid car, so I was able to charge the car up, which was great for the planet and all that kind of thing. And then walked through to watch Loch Seaforth berth, and lo and behold, there is Hebridean Princess sitting. It's a dull, slightly overcast day, but I was reminded I was on Columba in, I think it was 1969, and we were on a cycling trip, my friend John Hendry and I, and we cycled on one particular day. We went up to Tobermory, and we cycled down to Craigmuir, and we caught the what's it called again? The Columba. Thank you. On the way down. So we just walked on the gangplank, dumped our bikes and walked in. And about a minute later, having sat down just to have a cup of tea or something, there was this kind of strangled announcement comes through. Would the owners of the two bikes in the entrance hall please come and remove them immediately, kind of thing, because apparently it was a safety hazard. So that was that. Hebridean Princess sitting rather nicely there. Passengers all the way, kind of seeing bits of Scotland that only they see. And I whipped around to the other side of the pier, and here was Loch Seaforth making her grand entrance. I think that's her best angle, if I'm honest. I think she looks really nice there, kind of that three-quarter view. When you look at her kind of side on like that, I don't know, there's just something about it. The bow's a bit kind of blunt, and I'm just not quite so keen on that angle. I think the second best angle, maybe that one. I didn't mean it that way, but I think that's actually quite a nice angle. I think the fact that the white bit of the hull is so far down actually looks quite neat there, especially when it's first painted. And that's not a bad angle of her either. She's a fine ship built in 2014 in Flensburg, Germany. She's by far the largest of the CalMac fleet. She's 180 meters long, 18 meters broad. She takes 700 passengers, 143 cars, big. Fast too, 19 knots. I think I'm right in saying the locals wanted like two smaller ships, but they ended up with one big one like this. I went on board, parked up, went on board. I just quite like that view. It's just something about it. I don't know why. With a funnel in the kind of the mast half there. That's a view down to the stern. Like all the modern CalMac ships, she doesn't have much outdoor stuff going on up front, but at the back there's quite a lot going on, as you can see, especially in this picture. That's looking the other way. And we left. And there's Hebridean Princess again. Ullapool spread out behind. Inside, I like the fact that she's got kind of small areas where if you go on to some of the older ferries, there's huge, big open plan spaces. But I quite like the fact there's that kind of intimacy about her. Got over to Stornoway. It was a nice journey, no problems. There she is at Stornoway Pier. I was determined to try and get a picture of her on the move. So I kind of drove down the loch a little bit and captured that picture there of her with a bone in her teeth, and she's wandering away back towards Ullapool. So then it was Tarbert. Drove down. Wasn't going to go on the Tarbert to Uig run because I'd done that a few times before, but thought, well, I'll just take a few pictures of tomorrow morning's steed, which was Hebrides. She makes a fine sight approaching the pier from, that's probably half a mile out with the zoom lens on the camera. That's her at the pier. And then I took a picture with a kind of wide angle lens just to try and kind of get the feel of the, okay, I'm not so keen on the marina. I share people's views on that, but the just that setting, I think it just looks absolutely lovely. With the ferry just finishing off in the pier there. So then we hurled down towards Leverburgh, I think it is, to meet up for the first time with Loch Portain. Never been on her before. I think I'd seen her down in the Clyde once or twice. The picture's dreadful. Sorry, the light was going to be this time quite low in the sky, and it was a bit into the sun, so apologies. But I couldn't kind of wander around without feeling maybe missed the boat. So that's her approaching the slipway there. I just love the journey, though. The journey is incredible. If you haven't done it, do it, because it wanders around. Just unbelievable. At one point, you're actually facing an island. You're traveling at full speed, and you're thinking, Captain, anyone there? Beam me up, Scotty, do something. And then whirls round. And that picture taken from the stern kind of shows you just how tortuous the route is. She landed at Bernery in good time. I was on the last run of the day. So there is a kind of causeway link between Bernery and North Uist, where I was headed next. So you'll see she kind of, I took this picture of her. Ramp is up, as you can see. But if you look here, she is wandering along. I've driven along the causeway slightly. And then I've taken a wee movie picture. I just love the color in this, the sky and the reflecting on a mill pond as she kind of heads off. She's going quite quickly too. I can't help but think that they're quite keen to get home and maybe have a pint or two in the local pub. So, day 2, Loch Maddie to Mallaig via Skye and Raasay. And look at the view. It's just spectacular. The colours today were really good. There it is on the map. For those that don't know where we're talking about, Loch Maddie is kind of middle, halfway down the page. So I'm going to Uig, driving down to Sconser, across to Raasay, then driving down to Armadale and across to Mallaig. Don't you just hate people? We used to just say, why would anyone get a personalized number plate? It's absolutely pathetic. So my wife's name is Lois, and what can I say? So that's that's her car, not mine. Okay, so those were my digs for the night. Loch Maddie Hotel. It's literally 100 yards along from the marshalling area of the ferry yard, so it's just there. And I caught Hebrides with the sun shining on her, and okay, the shadows there, unfortunate, but she looked spick and span there in that very early morning sun. This would be about 6:30 in the morning. Oh, by the way, in Scotland, they don't have bed and breakfasts or B&Bs. They just have Bs. If you're traveling on CalMac on the island, going back to the mainland, because every single time it's 7 o'clock in the morning, which was a nightmare. CalMac got a lot of business from me in breakfast, as we'll see later. On board Hebrides, this was my first. No, it wasn't my first. It was my second time in Hebrides. She'd been on the Clyde before. But a ship of her era, she's 20-odd years old now. There she is, built in, I think it was built in Ferguson's. Yeah, that's right. Launched by the Queen, the late Queen, in August 2000. 99 meters long, 15.8 meters broad. Big ship, 612 passengers, 100 cars. Apparently it's needed at certain times of the year. Not today, though. It's fairly quiet. That's the cafeteria. Look at this. Absolutely beautiful day. The wake straight in the background. It was just a lovely day to go sailing. This is her nearer to Ullapool. Uig. She kind of slows down, and then for those of you who've not been there, there's a kind of a 270-degree turn to stick her stern in at the link span there. And that's the link span at Uig. Sorry. Oh. Sometimes it does this. It kind of, yeah, there we are. There's a picture of a car there. You don't need to worry about that. That's her. I suspect I've done what a lot of steamer dreamers have done. There's a lay-by about halfway up the hill on the way down towards Sconser. So just get out the car there, take a quick picture, and away you go. But it's a nice view there of Uig, which is a lovely wee place. It's actually well worth the visit. Past President Angus, he made good his escape. I phoned and said, I'm coming to Uig, and he said, fine, I'll be away. That's unfair. He was going down to Edinburgh that morning, so we missed each other. But he's coming to the dinner on Friday, so we'll see him then. Okay, so that's Uig, and then it was on down to Sconser. Again, never been on this route either. Sconser to Raasay. Was really looking forward to it. Heard great things about Sconser. Not Sconser. It's nothing particularly good about Sconser. But Raasay is a nice place. Here's a close-up. And this is the first of the literary class Loch vessels that I was on. Well, she's not a Loch class, though. She's a literary class. This is Hallaig. Nice wee ship. Kind of dumpy in that picture, perhaps. She's been on that route now for almost. She was launched in 2012, so she's been there for just about all the time since then. She's actually named originally after an old town on the island of Raasay that was cleared in the clearances. On board, I had obviously left my car, and this is my first view of Raasay Pier and Slipway. It reminded me of Largs, because you've got the L shape, and you've got the slipway at the front. The only difference is the slipway is actually parallel to the leg of the pier, where in Largs obviously it's at the angle and slightly removed. But I think it's quite handy, and the mariners amongst us will confirm or deny. I think it's quite handy because when you're parked up and you've got an hour or so to wait, you just kind of put the ramp up, tie a rope to the pier, and you're done. You're not having to move around the pier and go to the other side or anything along those lines. So she entered service proper on the Sconser Raasay route in October 2013. She's relieved on other routes, notably Fishnish to Loch Allen and Malig to Armadale. Quite a big, 43 metres long, 12 broad. She can carry 150 passengers and up to 23 cars. By the way, £10 million. It's quite a lot of money. Not quite as much as some of the more recent ferries, but still quite a lot of money. There she is, just about to leave, and I just took a little movie of her leaving. I love the way she just slides off, a bit like the streakers used to do. There's Rassay House in the background. More of Rassay House in a minute. And I was really taken by this island. There's Callum's Road on it, which was built by an individual. There's a gin distillery on it. Not that I would ever necessarily want to drink gin often. And the views are spectacular, as you can see. That's one that I actually posted on Facebook to a bit of amusement. A nice cup of coffee and a homemade piece of lemon slice, which I can thoroughly recommend. Very good. Okay, next picture. Loch Fyne. Well, it's not, yeah, it's the ship, not the, yeah, you know what I mean. So this is us. I've driven down to Armadale, south, kind of southern corner, if you will, of Skye. And the demasted about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, Loch Fyne, and also ramps ever so slightly altered because she now serves permanently on this Malig Armadale route. So therefore, instead of landing at slipways, she has to land at link spans. So they had to kind of adjust things there as well. Workhorse of the fleet, I think they call them the Super Loch class, Lochs Fyne and Dunvegan. She's 1991, so she's 30 odd years, 31 years old. Again, built at Ferguson's, 54 meters long, 13 meters broad, 200 passengers, 36 cars. So she'll move traffic when she has to, which of course was what she had to do in her original route when she was she and her sister worked on the Skye route. Just a couple of detailed shots of her appearing the pier, and then a detailed shot there of her bridge showing the new kind of slightly cantilevered mast sticking out the top of the bridge there. Okay. Isn't that just lovely? That's the Knoydart Peninsula from Loch Fyne on my way over to Malig. And it just shows you that, you know, when the weather's good, you know, there's fewer finer places to be than Scotland. Bleak, perhaps, but magnificent. Now, at this point, I should tell you about the first failure of my trip. I had planned, I saw Lawrence was furiously looking down at all the various things. I had planned, as he will doubtless confirm, that I was going to go down and do Kilcoen to Tobermory and back as a kind of one-off just to get that one ticked off. But that then on Sunday afternoon, I was going to go on the Small Isles non-landing cruise. I was told I couldn't book it. So, and they said, speak to the people at Malig. So I went and spoke to people at Malig, and there was a kind of a computer says no moment. And I said, well, I'm doing this for a talk. And it was like, no. And I said, well, let's see if we can trade something. I had nothing to trade. I mean, people said you were in a negotiation. No, if you don't have anything to trade with, you are not in a negotiation, let me assure you. So I had to give up on that, which was a bit annoying, but it couldn't be helped. And it was all as a result of kind of COVID and all those different things going wrong when they went wrong. So back, went to Malig, checked into my hotel, looked at various timetables, thought about things, decided on a slight change of plan for the morrow. And in the meantime, decided to go and have a wee look at Lottie approaching Malig on her sail from Loch Boysdale. So this is her with the Coolans, the Skye Coolans behind, just approaching that little, I think they call it the Skerries or something. Close up of her kind of just about to execute her kind of right-hand turn into Malig Pier. That's her passing my little, I was about half a mile up the road, and there's a little viewpoint there. You can stick your lens, stick your camera down, your tripod down, take a few pictures. And then that's her into the sun, sadly, but that's her going into the link span in Malig itself. And then I thought, well, it's kind of mid-afternoon. What am I going to do? And I heard this kind of toot noise and thought, oh, blooming heck, yes, steam train. So I thought, well, we'll go and visit the steam train. So I went and visited the steam train. There she is. Sorry, it's slightly out of focus, but there she is. It just, was it Stanier Black 5, number 45407? No, it's not. It's 44871. So the notes are wrong. Doesn't matter. Built in 1937, which is the same year as Juno and Jupiter. I see no likeness. But then that's a tree. Okay. Day 3, Malig to Malig. Oh, this was a nightmare. Via Ardnamurchan, Mull and Skye. This really was a nightmare. The map. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm kind of going on a kind of big round trip to nowhere and coming back. So Malig, drive down to Kilcoan, over to Tobermory, drive down to Fishnish, across to Loch Allen, and then back up to Malig. That was the day. Oh, and then I did a quick return on Loch Rooster because I'd not been on that yet. I was desperate to catch as many ships as I could. The least said about the drive down to Kilcoan, the better. Starts off as a lovely scenic drive, and then it kind of diminishes into kind of single track pothole nightmare. And every so often, a local comes round a blind corner at 50 miles an hour, expecting you to get out of the way. And you just think, you muppet. Which bit of this are you not getting? It's like driving on the wrong side of the road round a blind corner at 55 miles. It's just utterly ridiculous. So if any of you are watching this that were in those cars, I'm sorry, it wasn't me, Gov, honestly. Fortunately, no camper vans. So I managed to get there in time and I captured that shot. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will see the Isle of Lewis heading down, having left Barra, heading down towards Oban. I can't say it's a picture of the Isle of Lewis because it's not. It's a picture of the Sound of Mull, but it's a picture, and that's from Kilcoan, just the harbour there. Loch Tarbert, an old friend for the Clyde, of course. There she is. Wheelhouse cantilevered mast. Now, this is a 1992 version of the kind of Loch class. So what they did was they increased the number of lanes by 1 and they decreased the number of lounges by 1 to get slightly more cars on. So she and her sister, well, no, she can take essentially 18 cars, maybe slightly fewer passengers, 150, I think it is. But she was originally designed for, I think I'm right in saying, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, Craig Muir, no, Loch Ranza, that one. Yeah. Okay, that's her getting closer to the pier. And this is us departing, slipway, sorry, and this is us departing the slipway. I think they've done a lot of work in that slipway. And the last time I was there, Call was the kind of boat that was serving the route. My car registration began with a J. Those of you old enough will know what I mean. Others amongst you will look at me and go, what excuse me? You won't know what I mean. It was a long time ago.
1991.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, thank you. So it would be about 92 or 93, I think. And I don't think that was as developed as it is there. I might be wrong. There's that car on that car deck. Again, there's that. Yeah. And there's, you know, you're getting close to Mull when you come past Tobermory Lighthouse, especially if you're going to Tobermory. It has another name. I'm not even going to try. Thank you. So here we are, Tobermory. It really is picturesque, is it not? There's the kind of painted house. The lovely thing about Tobermory is it's on a kind of a circle. So even a rubbish photographer can get a vaguely half-decent picture of, you can see Loch Tarbert whizzing around back on our way to Kilcoan. Of course, the obligatory three-masted sailing ship. Three-masted sailing ship and Tobermory Pier itself. The three-masted sailing ship is the, I'm going to have a guess at Thalassa. It might be Thalassa, I don't know. Dutch, kind of, I think, high end. They go whiskey distillery touring and things like that. Lovely looking ship, I'm sure you'll agree. The picture's slightly, I'm into the sun, so it's difficult to get a decent picture, but a lovely ship nonetheless. Lots of memories for everybody that's been there here, I would think. Waverley. For me, it was Loch Nevis. not the new one, the old one, back in 1969. That was the first time I paid a visit. But just that Art Deco style is just magnificent. The Mishnish Hotel. I went in for a cup of coffee, and it's funny how these places, you know, at night they buzz. There's a kind of a buzz about them. There's people playing guitar, and there's lots of singing and dancing going on. During the day, it doesn't buzz just quite the same, and so the atmosphere wasn't there. But it's a lovely, I love the building. I love the way it's painted in that garish colour. It's fantastic. On down, quick drive, Fishnish to meet the second of the literary class ships. This time it's Loch Inver. Decent queue. I would think it would be half full. That's us approaching Loch Allen. Somebody could tell me the stone structure there, was that the original, did they build on that to the original pier? There's nothing to do with the pier at all. Well, I'm thanking you all for bringing me up short on that one. That's good. There's a slipway there, and that's a little study of her from kind of almost sea level. You can see she's got the bow thrusters going to keep her in. And then a couple of shots of her leaving Loch Allen, and that was followed by a tortuous drive back up to Mallaig, where I met Loch Vroosta. Now, again, I've seen Loch Vroosta, but I've never been on her. So I thought, well, I better get on her because she's, if you want, relieving for the time being. This was May, so she was relieving at this point for on the Mallaig to Armadale run. So running a dual service with Loch Fyne. She's, if I'm honest, she's quite, there was a kind of a jet propulsion system that works for her. You can see they've got this new idea of the ferry, of the bridge over the middle of the car deck kind of thing, which is a new departure for her. She's noisy, I have to tell you. She's very noisy and quite smelly, if I'm honest. Just the fumes from the diesel engines, quite noisy and smelly. But there we are. Built by McTay Marine. You'd think they were Scottish, but actually it's in Bromborough. 1996, originally built, of course, for the Leverborough Berneray route. But quickly the route outgrew her, and so she was replaced by Loch Portain that we met earlier on. 150 passengers, 18 cars, so it's kind of standard Loch class size. And she was on the Ardmore to Eriskay service until 2007 when she became a relief vessel. So that's her at the slipway in Mallaig, and this is me walking, quite a steep slipway actually, walking down. I was halfway walking down and I took my camera out, and the crewman kind of goes, "Come on, you, come on." I think they wanted, because it was the last run of the day. So that was that. Mid-channel, we passed Loch Fyne. So that's a little study of Loch Fyne mid-channel. And then this was the journey back. You see these people at the front, brave people, because there was splashing coming up. And then suddenly, at the very last minute, I saw this. She's pretty close, I would say. So it was funny. I had a conversation there with the relief captain, who was a lovely, lovely guy. And I don't know if you heard the hammering going on there. That was him trying to fix something on the ship as she was sailing. And he was telling me that he lived on Colonsay. I said, "Oh, that's funny. I used to curl with a guy that lived on Colonsay." And he said, "Who was that?" I said, "His name's Stuart Robertson." He said, "Not Stuart, Leslie Robertson." And I said, he said, yeah, I know. In fact, I'm going for a pint with him the day after tomorrow. I said, "Oh, pass my best wishes." Then I remembered that my friend Graham Adam, whom you've met, I suspect, on Waverley, he works in the shop on Waverley, that my friend Graham Adam had sent me a picture of a front cover of the Scottish Curl. It's a long story, but we won a curling competition. And in that picture is both me and Leslie. So I showed him, I got it out, got the picture up, and I showed him the picture. And I said, "Well, there I am." he said, well, I can see Leslie, but where are you? And I went, because I used to be quite thin. And so, yeah. Thank you, Jim. Oh, here's the one that I didn't get on, Loch Nevis. Quite annoying, but can't be helped. And it was for good reason. So there we are. Just caught her. And this was I would have been just off her at this point. She was just maneuvering out of the way to let Loch Vrusda in to the slipway. That was my overnight accommodation. It's at this point that I get this text from CalMac saying weather is inclement. Your ferry journey may be disrupted. This was the one that I was taking tomorrow from Malig. Thanks very much indeed. 100 yards along the road there to Loch Boisdale. It might be disrupted. So I went, oh, okay. And then about 5 minutes later, about 6 o'clock, another one comes in and says, it's off. You're going to Oban. And by the way, your booking's cancelled and it's first come, first served. So I went, okay, that's really cool. So that's an 87-mile journey I really didn't want to take. That means getting up at absolutely ridiculous o'clock in order to go and catch the ferry and drive down to Oban. So that's exactly what I did. Drove down to Oban and I was going to have a breakfast there. That's the one place I was going to have breakfast. Not that this is an issue. Maybe that's why I'm the size I am. Day 4, Malig to Barra via Oban and Eriskay. Here it is on the map. Now, this is on board Lottie in what I thought were incredibly rough seas. Let me show you. So I sent that round the family WhatsApp group saying, look at this, I wasn't seasick. I'm your man. And my youngest son, Ian, who's at this point, he's a Royal Naval officer, immediately texts back and says, get over yourself, Dad. It's barely sea state 4. He then sends me a video of him. He actually took a small patrol ship called the HMS Forth down to the Falkland Islands through the South Atlantic. And at one point, they went through a very heavy storm. At least I thought it was a heavy storm because he sent me this picture. And there, at one point, there is green water on the bridge, just... And one of the officers on deck says, oh, for... And I'll leave the rest to your imagination. I said to him, what sea state was that? And he said, 6. And I said, 6? I said, how far does this go? He said, it goes all the way up to 9. That is described as slight. 9, which is 14 meters waves height and over, is described as, I just love this, phenomenal. So, nice wee picture coming up of our Lottie at, where are we now? Loch Boisdale. She's had a long, hard day, ramps up at the back, as you can see. There's a nice wee causeway you can go around and just take that picture there, which is quite pleasant, before you drive off to, by this time I'd missed the ferry I was going on, that is important later. And here's, again, the weather's not looking great, is it? And this is Eriskay, that's right. And an old friend comes round, Loch Elaine. So there she is, the old Largs to Millport ferry. And she is now the ferry that's on that route. Launched in Buckie in April 1997. So still going strong, 35 years later, and giving good service there on that route. Pretty quiet. I mean, you can see there's kind of 1.5 lanes maybe of traffic on board. Bridge again over the deck now as opposed to the side. And the reason that this was an issue was that gets a great write-up. It's the Kissimmel restaurant in Castle Bay, and it's absolutely fabulous. I know this because I had a carry-out, if I'm honest. Don't tell anyone. I had a carry-out and enjoyed it thoroughly. but I missed my dinner there, which was really quite upsetting. I did, however, catch that picture. Weather's just improving a little bit, and this is my ship of tomorrow, Isle of Lewis, departing at, guess what, 7 o'clock in the morning. So day 5, Barra to Oban via Kerrera and Lismore. There's the map, and that's me getting on. Now, I need to choose my words very carefully here. This is the stern entrance of the Isle of Lewis, and it's offset to one side, as you can see. Big old ship is the Isle of Lewis. I know she's no longer on her original route, but she's still a pretty impressive site for a CalMac ferry. Originally built for Ullapool to Stornoway. Again, Ferguson's. It's amazing how many ships were launched at Ferguson's yard by Princess Alexandra, no less, in April 1995, and entered service 3 months later. Ooh, that's interesting. 101 meters long, 19 meters breadth, 18 knots, 680 passengers, 123 cars. Lots of outdoor space at the back. I quite like that view. There's the famous church in the top middle there, you can see. But it was a fairly dreich day, if I'm honest with you. So there weren't too many of the punters outside. She's a huge big ship. So although she was quite busy on the card deck, she was actually very quiet in the passenger area. And that's us just departing Castle Bay on our kind of long. Yeah, this is about the longest route. I suppose it is. Yeah. From Barra into Oban. I just thought that was a quite a nice view of Tobermory on the way down. I quite like the ambition of the guy here. This guy here decides he's going to paint his house yellow as well, and kind of, you know, with all these. And he, in order to make sure people notice, he paints it really, 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 really garish yellow. That'll keep you awake at night, actually, and you'd be inside the room looking out, and you'd still be kept awake. The Flying Dutchman, that's a lovely wee ship, that actually, I have to say. It was really quite a nice wee surprise. Former fishing trolley, now a luxury schooner. On our way south, we overtook her. Met up with Karusk. I wasn't that worried about meeting up with Karusk because, of course, I was going to be sailing on her later, I thought. There she is. Troubled start, but going well now. And, of course, now relocated to her original route, which was Malig Armadale. Hebridean Princess makes a guest appearance again. This was her actually dropping off and bringing on a new set of passengers. And that's a nice wee view of one of the 1986 ferries, Loch Striven, which is now, of course, on the Lismore service. More of her in a minute. Of particular interest to those of you who enjoy a dram, there's the Oban Distillery just there right behind the North Pier. And can I also say that the 2 restaurants there on the North Pier are both excellent. So I went from Isle of Lewis, which is the second largest ship in the fleet, to arguably the daintiest, smallest ship I think I've ever seen. Well, it is, with CalMac colours on her, the Carvoria, which is new, built in Lerwick, on Stornoway, not Stornoway, Lerwick, on the Shetlands. Fine wee ship, outboard engine. It laughingly says on the CalMac website, we can carry 2 cars. Aye, I'd like to see you give it a go, because that is a tight deck, but she's a very useful little ship for that island. And I walked about 1.5 miles along and 1.5 miles back, but about 3/4 of the way along, I thought to myself, boy, you must have been going at some speed to get that far up that field. Quick dash back from Gallenach. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I'll give it a go. Gallenach, is that about right? Yeah. To Oban, and the slipway is just beside the main piers there, and this is Loch Striven coming purposefully across to pick us all up and take us out to Lismore. That's her actually approaching the slipway. And this is us on board. It was a stormy wee day by this time, I have to tell you. It was getting a little bit rough. Just have a look at this. This is her at the slipway. And I think this might take a little bit of seamanship to get this one right.
You know Jack Cornish well.
The crewman, as you probably noticed, would be a regular player for the Glasgow Celtic team. You can't say that anymore.
No.
So she's one of four of the 1986 small ferries, useful little ferries, 2 lanes, 2 lounges, and they've been deployed all over the network, and I've just gradually moved tentacles. I always think of the big ferries as the kind of arteries and the wee ferries as the veins, the CalMac network. And those wee ferries have been on the go since 1986, so they've been on the go for a fair old while. That's 36 years and counting, so good for them, although there are plans to replace them all in the very near future. Day 6, Oban to Port Ellen via Mull, Iona and Colonsay. Now, this was the important day. This is the one sailing I could not miss, the one from Oban down to Port Ascaig, because this is me trying to link north to south, but do it by sea. So that gives you an idea of where I'm trying to get to and from where. So we started off with Isle of Mull. There she is at the pier at Craigmuir. I drove along to Fiona Fort, and I thought, that doesn't look like the Loch Buoy. And it doesn't look like the Loch Buoy because it isn't the Loch Buoy. It's actually the Relief Loch class vessel, actually Loch Linney. And Loch Buoy was away getting fixed or something. I don't know what was the story at that point. Crossed to, that's her, I've been across, that's her just leaving Iona. I decided to wait in Iona because it's such a marvellous, magical island. And I think that's one of the kind of most magical little buildings. It's the Telford Church in Iona. Thomas Telford, this wee Church of Scotland building just up from the pier is one of 32 Telford churches built throughout the Highlands and Islands of Scotland. And this one was built in 1828. And I think it represents the first example of a prefabricated set of buildings, because the buildings were put together, I think I'm right in saying, in Glasgow, and then shipped up and erected on site. And please forgive me because I'm quoting here, and please don't take this the wrong way, but the reason that these were built was the church, the high hegians in the church, that's not the right phrase, but you know what I mean, wanted to prevent the spread of popery in Scotland. And so they built 32 of these churches. There's another one in Portree if you're interested. They're all over the place, just dotted around. And this was to keep the Church of Scotland flag flying high. If you look, they're all the steeple at the far end is a fairly common trait. Most people go and see the Abbey, which of course is a wonderful renovated building. George McNeill, I think his name was the minister from Govan. And during the Depression in the 30s, he enlisted shipyard workers and all kinds of people to go and start renovating that building. And it's what you see today. John Smith, of course, the famous politician, leader of the Labour Party, is buried in the yard at Iona Abbey. I just like this view. Sorry, I just like this view. I thought it was a lovely view. It's just to the right of the slipway and looking kind of along the beach. That little boat just finishes off quite nicely. Loch Linney makes her approach. I'm not going to play the whole thing. And quite a big, I mean, you know, that must be one of the busiest little loch class routes in the network, I would think. Folk disappearing off and to visit the island. Now, at this point, I got a real fright. I came back, I was fully expecting Carusk to be at the pier. Actually, there's something else I should tell you. That's the same photograph you saw earlier on. I apologize. I was fully expecting Carusk to be at the pier because I needed to catch the 2 ships, not just the 1 ship. Total failure on my part. I then nearly made the cardinal sin of changing a plan halfway through because I nearly said, I'll wait till Carusk comes. And the trouble is, Carusk was actually on layover for about an hour, and I would have missed Hebridean Isles going south. So it was the best decision I ever didn't take, if you see what I mean. But just to put us into context at this stage, I'm on Mull. I'm trying to get back to Oban, and I'm then going via Colonsay down to Port Ascaig. And I managed to catch Hebridean Isles. Now, she is an old-fashioned kind of a steamer, not a steamer, a bugler. Lots of outdoor space. And here I doff my cap in the general direction of Stuart Craig, who's here tonight, the late Gibby and his brother, Andy Anderson and Ian McLaren, sometimes known as Duncan now.
That's correct.
Yeah. Because they identified their favorite seat in the entire fleet. If those of you who haven't read Away with the Ferries, please read them, and you'll find out that that seat there, top right, is their favorite seat. And I wondered why, because it's facing the wrong way. It's at the back. It's, why would anyone like that seat? And I went and sat in it. That, by the way, is a self-portrait. And I then realized why, because it's completely sheltered. You've got the window out so you can see, but it's sheltered in the sense that there's a bulkhead there to my right, to my left, sorry, and there's, of course, you're sheltered from the back. And if the wind is following you, it doesn't matter because the ship's going at a fair speed, so you're okay.
There's a window in it as well.
And there's a window, yeah. Sorry, the window, you can see the window there, yeah. However, it does have what all the newer ferries lack, the bigger ferries that is, which is a front forward kind of facing area. Now, having said that, unless the weather is gorgeous, it's very rare that people actually go there because it's just quite blowy. That said, oh, sorry, yeah, okay. You have to, you just have to. You cannot go in a CalMac ferry and not, all I'm saying. That's us. We've been to Colonsay. We're now going, there's just above the flag, you can see the Jura slipway there. But much more importantly, to my right, there's the Kalila distillery, which is the heart malt for Johnny Walker. For those of you interested in your whiskey, it's quite close to Boonaha, yeah, which is just next door. I'm not going to attempt to tell you the name of the Jura ferry, except to say Argyll and Bute. But you can see, look behind Port Ascaig, it's been blasted to make room for the marshalling yards for the bigger ferries. And there's Hebridean Isles sitting quietly, loading a large lorry before she headed off for, the light by this time was getting a bit dark, but she's heading off down to Kennacraig for the last leg of her day. My 10th favourite building on Isla, the first 9 are the 9 distilleries. This is the 10th. I love it. It's in Bowmore at the top of the road. It looks down rather accusingly at the Bowmore distillery. And it's built in the round like that. So is the deal Canny Hyde in the corner, which I just quite like. I spent a night, I should tell you, this is an old friend of mine that owns this, the Askernish Bed and Breakfast. It's right hard by Port Ellen Pier. It's owned by a lady called Joy, who used to sell fish in Balerno. I just mentioned that. So as I add to your knowledge this evening. So Port Ellen to Campbelltown via Arran and Bute. So we're now getting towards home territory for me. Finlagan, I've not got a decent outside shot. I decided I wasn't going to take anybody else's pictures. So these are all pictures that I took, good, bad, and indifferent. So I didn't get a decent outside shot because it was in such a rush at the other end for reasons I'll explain. But that's on the rear deck of Finlagan. It's funny because it looks quite stepped there, doesn't it? But it's not. It's like the King George V used to be. It's just a straight line down at the back of the, the shelter deck thing. Cars loading up. I was already on board, obviously. And that's us departing Port Ellen. Again, just a lovely little village, is it not? Just white painted houses just around the bay. There are about 5 distilleries within about 4 miles. It's a remarkable little place. On board, very wood-oriented, quite a different feel from the older ferries. Lovely wooden parquet floor down there, as you can see. That amazing, I've not got a picture of that TARDIS-like fountain on the main deck. It's quite a ship. You just have to. To be fair, every single day, I could have had a picture of this every single day. I thought it would have been boring. And down to my territory. So this is Katrina. And at this point, I am breathing heavily. Everything was going swimmingly. Finlagan arrived on time. I got off. I was up the hill. Everything was going well. And then there was a stop sign. And at 5 minutes, I thought, well, we're still okay. 10 minutes. What's going on? 15 minutes. Goodness me. It turned out there was some Polish people working on, they must have been Polish because they were working on the road. and there was a hold up whilst they did some work that was necessary. They did that work. Fortunately, we got down the hill to the other side to catch Katrina. And coming off her were these lovely little Morgan cars. There was obviously some kind of rally on or some kind of thing like that. This is a 2009 Morgan Roadster, for those of you who are interested. I did that by checking the number plate. It's quite a full service. That's my wee car at the back. This is her at Loch Ranza. And at this point, I have to tell you a tale. I actually walked onto the pier at Loch Ranza because there's no fence up there. There's no people with hard hats on saying you can't walk on this pier because there's a danger to life and limb. There were no ropes hanging around. I walked onto that pier to take that picture. And I was very fortunate because I did not fall into the sea. All I'm saying. Down to Brodick. I'd had one of those moments again. Driving down past Corrie, trying to avoid the kind of narrow bits of the rock and the roads on the side, and I suddenly see Caledonian Isles sailing across off towards Ardrossan. And I said to myself, that should be the Isle of Arran, because I'm supposed to be going on Caledonian Isles on this next sailing. There must be some mistake. There was no mistake. Well, there was my mistake. I'd there was a kind of malfunction of brain at this point. Anyhow, yes.
Sorry, can I stop you? It's all gone technically very wrong.
Oh, right.
Everything seems to have just decided it doesn't want to work.
Okay.
Zoom doesn't want to work. Give me 1 second.
We'll pause for a second.
What happens if I do that? Nothing. Joys of technology. Probably no one can hear me.
Everyone hear everything as usual. Excellent. Good. I think we're back on. Normal service shall resume.
Okay.
A few photos behind now, so I'll catch up. I think that's the photo you took. And here we are. Lovely. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So Isle of Arran at Brodick. She is probably the most popular ship in the fleet, I would imagine. I often think Lottie would be if she plied her trade nearer the kind of population centre. But Isle of Arran, she's the oldest big ship in the fleet, and she's probably the most popular. And here I'm going to say something slightly outrageous, because I think our internal accommodation's dated and a bit limited. And if you're on a long sailing, as I was later on going to Campbelltown, it was difficult really to. I mean, she's lovely and she looks right, and she's got a kind of proper mast arrangement, and where the funnel's back and forth is supposed to side by side be even better. But I'll tell you what, she's what is it, 1984? Great servant to the fleet, no question of that at all, and still got a couple of years left in her, I would suggest. And a great second ship on this particular route. So I drove swiftly up to Weems Bay and just kind of like looked at Weems Bay Pier, and I just think it's magnificent. That's me looking up towards the railway station. Designed by James Miller in 1903 for the Caledonian Railway, remarkable for its use of glass and steel curves. I just think it's absolutely lovely. And in fact, there was a lot of work done to her at the turn of the century. She's listed in Britain's 100 best railway stations by Sir Simon Jenkins. And she was one of only 10 to be awarded 5 stars. And it's its photograph, that's on the front cover of the book. I mentioned that in passing. Sailed over on Argyll, back on Argyll. There is a picture of Argyll. You all know Argyll. What I don't get, both her and her sister, great ships. Single hull, therefore, can't do any other route. I think I'm right in saying than Weems Bay to Rothesay, which seems a shame because they're flying ships. This is the one I missed. This is Caledonian Isles coming into the link span at Brodick. I'd been on her earlier in the year. I'm still annoyed about it. I got it wrong. What can I say? Tough luck. Here's a day and a half. Campbelltown to Oban via Gia, Tarbert, Portavadie, Collins Drive, Roboda, Rothsay, Weems Bay, Lars, Cumberry, Gourock, Kilcreggan, and Dunoon. Okay. I'd been joined at this point by my friend Alan Ramsey, and the two of us put the world to rights and chewed a few cuds in the Argyle Arms Hotel in Campbelltown there. And I thought to myself the next morning, well, why don't you just park completely illegally on a double yellow line marked taxis to get a picture of the hotel? Look, the day started out on the cold side of quite reasonable. We drove, I don't know how far it is up to Tainlone, it's not that far. And by this time it's pouring. That's Loch Ranza, another of the 1986, the four of them. There she is, about to kind of land at the mainland. We joined and off we went. That's us. We walked up to the hotel, had a wee bit of breakfast because they don't serve breakfast on Loch Ranza. What can you say? And walked up to the hotel, had a bit of breakfast, walked back. And I think if the weather had been good, that would have been quite a nice picture. But the weather was heroically bad at this point, chucking it down. Cleared up a little bit by the time we got to Tarbert. And Billy Tomlinson's favourite ship, of course, in the fleet, the Isle of Cumbrae. She's one of a kind, actually, although a lot of the later ones are kind of, they look like her, but she is one of a kind. 3 lanes of traffic, 18 cars, revolutionised the Cumbrae slip to Largs, or other way around route, but was outgrown by the route after about 10 years. I do like Tarbert as a place to photograph a ship coming in because on both sides there's elevation, so depending where the sun, you can kind of take a half-decent shot or shots of the ships as they come in. On board, 1977, still going strong, not many mechanical failures, could go on forever. I don't think she will now because there is a whole bunch of replacements coming in, but still an honest servant to the fleet. Loch Dunvegan. I hadn't realised she'd been demasted as well. Apparently during COVID 2020, she was demasted and given the same kind of mast arrangement over the bridge there, as you can see. Short route, obviously. Every time we pass this area on Waverley, if it's not Ian, it's somebody else telling us about the father and the 5 ships, the houses, sorry. So I looked up Pevsner. I've got Pevsner's, I quite like this. I looked up Pevsner's guide. They don't get a mention. They don't get a mention in Pevsner's architectural guide to Argyll and Bute, which is absolutely outrageous. They're just called pretty little villas, which is their way of saying rubbish. But I think they're actually rather cute. Would you look at that? Actually, look bottom right of the screen. That is rain. Oops, sorry, I don't know what happened there. That is rain. We got on to Bute. There she is. Alan at this point left me because he thought the man is mad. Because next stop was Largs. And this is me on Loch Ridden. Now, Largs is not a pier. Largs is a harbour. And if you look, there's to the left of the picture there's a kind of a breakwater comes out with a red pole sticking out at the end. And the pier was originally built to protect little ships and things inside the all-enveloping L of the pier. The Clyde steamers used to berth on the west wall, the west wall of the pier. But to all intents and purposes, she's actually a bit of a harbour. This is me on Loch Ridden, tight, busy. That's her at, so I walked up the ramp. Fortunately, there's a bus stop at the top because by this time it was bucketing down. That's her departing, obviously. And then Loch Shira is just so different. She's such a big ship compared to the older Loch class vessels. Like Loch Portaine, she has that lounge below the bridge. The bridge is very high up in the ship, as you can see. Big ship. And I think Andrew Clark and Alex and Susan will confirm that she's revolutionized the route. She's interestingly never gone anywhere else than Largs to Cumbrae. 2006, she's getting on. She's 14 years old. We still think of her as new. And when it was a lovely picture that somebody, I think it might have been Susan, posted on the web, Loch Ridden and Loch Shira side by side, and the difference is massive. This is her approaching the pier, obviously, and she's now in, the slipway, and she's now in the slipway. I love a good stushy. Do you remember the old maids? They used to be very good at, reversing into piers and creating all kinds of stush. And that to me is cremola foam. That's what we used to. Do you remember cremola foam? I was a big fan of the lemon cremola foam. Just putting that one out there. Okay, Loch Shira at Largs. You can see the breakwater there. You can see the fact, as I said earlier, the slipway, of course, is not quite the same as up at Raasay, but it's nonetheless similar. And then it was a mad dash. I suddenly realized I might be able to make the last sailing to Kilcreggan. So I thought, well, that would kill a bird with a stone. Not that I'm particularly into killing birds with stones, but I thought I'd do it, so I did it. Kilcreggan, walked up to the end of the pier. There was a half-hour layover here. I recommend the little cafe at the top. Whisper this amongst yourselves. The little cafe at the top where they do a very splendid millionaire's shortbread. Just again. Thank you very much indeed for those in the back who said something about putting on weight. There's Chieftain in all her glory, sailing back. Interesting history to Chieftain. Originally built, what a name to give a ship, Seabus. CalMac took it over in, 2020, and they've kind of repainted it, tarted it up a little bit. And so she's now painted in CalMac colours, so I needed to sail on her. Argyll Flyer was the one that took me over to Dunoon. Actually never been on Argyll Flyer before, so that was a first for me. And now I give you Dunoon Pier, which I think is disgraceful. I really honestly do. If this were in Switzerland, that would be a cafe, that would be a restaurant, that would be well used. I declare a familial interest at this point. My great-grandfather built that pier, William R. Copland, and he would be burling in his grave up at the necropolis if he knew what had happened to it. It's an absolute disgrace. It's even worse from that angle, which I think is a real shame. I posted this picture on Facebook, and a friend of mine who lives in Dunoon said, "Why have you posted a picture of our bathtubs?" I shall say no more. She's fine. She's very comfortable, quite quick. End of. Okay. So next I had to drive to Oban. And the drive up was quite funny. I won't spend too long telling you, but my sat nav in my car said to me, "Do not go there. There be dragons ahead. Go via Glencoe instead." I went the way I shouldn't have gone. We get to this big red bit in the sat nav, which basically means do not go here under any circumstances, danger of death. And then I got through that bit, and there was people coming the other way. There was no danger of death that I could see. And the mile, it goes from 150 to 15 in literally the space of a nanosecond. Absolutely outrageous. Anyhow, first world problem. Day 9, Oban to Edinburgh via Call and Tiree. And I got a stick on that bit as well because it's over this way somewhere. Now, I'd never been on Clansman before, so this was a first sister ship to Hebrides, same kind of dimensions. I'm not going to bore you with details. I enjoyed the sail up. That was the Isle of Mull, sitting at the link span, waiting our first trip. Oh, that was interesting. That was Pharos, which was one of the light ships. And that was Loch Tarbert disappearing off around towards the slipway at Tobermory. Call, for those of you who haven't been, lovely island, worth a visit. CalMac do this tour where you can get off at Call and there's a kind of taxi takes you around and visits all the various places. Great fun. That's her again. And that's her now at Tiree. Never been to Tiree before. I've got to say I've not set foot on the island yet, although I have now visited the pier. What a difficult pier to take a picture of a ship it is. There is a picture of the ship. The pier is hardly pretty. There is the pier. I cannot believe it because Tiree is gorgeous. Look at that. It's a blot in the landscape, I suppose. They do a lot of surfing. I would venture they don't do much surfing here. but they do a lot of surfing in Tiree. Leaving, nearly missed her, Isle of Mull, going up the other way towards Barra. That's the bridge overlooking the railway line. I decided to go up Pulpit Hill because I wanted to catch the money shot. So there's Hebridean Isles coming in from Colonsay. There's Isle of Mull going out. I thought, we've got it. We've nailed it. Just greenery, don't get in the way. Boom. Greenery got in the way. And my last picture of this bit of it is Isle of Mull disappearing round. Look at that house, by the way. Middle left. Magnificent. Disappearing off up on another journey to Craigmuir. How many has she made? Summary. 1,069 miles driven, 8 nights away, 30 CalMac ferries. I missed Caledonian Isles, Carrusk, Loch Nevis, Loch Buie. 44 voyages peer-to-peer. And if you'll grant me, 2 link spans at Oban plus 1 slipway, 51 piers or slipways visited. Conclusions. I did it on my own. I'm okay with my own company, but I think I maybe should have taken a friend. Although, to be said, I don't know that the friend would have enjoyed it as much as I did. That's key. Get it right. And always, always, always try to have a backup plan because it never goes according to plan. Make sure you book your accommodation in advance. To be honest, this was too rushed. Take time, enjoy the moment, which leads to maybe do it in bite-sized chunks. But if you haven't done it, do it. Would I do it again? You bet I would. You bet.